The last detail for this is to remove the back panel. So I have the back panel off here. The headliner in the back hooks onto the headliner. And there's hooks here. Okay. There is, you have to remove your wire for your rear window on both sides. And then there's 4 bolts, 1, 2, and then 2 on the other side, 1, 2, and then the rear panel comes right off. So this is off. The only last little thing that has to be done is to pull back the rubber of the and push the rear window out of the frame, and then it's all apart. Like I said, there was no surprises. It was no gotchas or anything. It was quite straightforward in doing this. And it looks like I got some rust here to repair up. Yep. So I got some rust here to repair. Should be no surprises on that. And molding. Okay, so that's the short little tutorial on how to remove it. No surprises, just follow the instructions, do everything it says, and you should have no trouble. Okay, next is reassembly. First I'm going to clean this up. Okay, so one of the things I thought I'd cover is rust along with this. So I got the back panel off, rear window is out, and we inspect it, and we see there's rust on the edges. There's a spot, and that on here, and this bit on the other side too. So how do I deal with it? Well, the first thing I do is I use a rust converter, or rust neutralizer as they're known as, which converts ferric oxide into a iron compound that doesn't rust anymore. This stuff also acts as a primer, and it only works on rust itself, not on steel. So I painted that on, which I've done, and I just used a little paintbrush, like so, and just paint it on. Turns it kind of a ruddy dark brown, and then we're going to let it dry. It's finishing up drying. Did both sides, did 2 coats of it, and then what I'm going to do after that is I'm going to use a paint over top of it. This rust paint, and any other little marks or spots of rust will be dealt with by the paint. Now, one of the other things you could do as part of your project for working with the roof is actually, I'll go over here to the car, is actually lifting up the roof molding seal, pull it up, and deal with any rust that's under there. And what I found on my car was that under this pad here, the water channel moves underneath, is that there was a lot of rust under here. And there was rust, little pockets under the molding in places. So even though the paint was bright and good looking all the way around, there was actually evil lurking underneath. So I pulled up the molding. I re-glued it down with weather strip adhesive. Well, first I pulled it up, treated the rust with the rust neutralizer. I then repainted the paint, and then glued the molding down. Okay. Now, one of the things, if you notice really close, is that there are no gaps between the paint and the molding. What I did is, after I glued the molding down and I made sure it was nice down and solid, is that I put a very, very narrow bead of black silicone sealant along here so that no water can get underneath the weather stripping again. And I went along the edge, on here, and on here where there was a big spot There's a little bit left over. Okay. Now, if you do this job, keep going along here and go right along. Pull up this molding here, because there's rust that forms all along the back channel, and you won't see it, and so you don't even see it here. There's no rust marks. Paint was bright, but on the lip itself was actually rusting out on this car, and it was pretty bad in places. And the same with the lower boot along the lip. Pull up and do that too. When you do the upper molding, here's a little tip that I figured out after I did it, is that measure across and mark the center line, and mark the molding with the center line, on the center line, and when you reassemble it, start from the center here and work your way back. I worked from the bottom up, and when I got to the front of the car, I had to end up doing a little bit of pulling and refitting. So start from the front, mark your center line on the molding on a car, maybe a grease pencil or something that won't stay, and start from the front, work your way back. Okay, and that will deal with all your rust. And the back panel will be painted, and we'll start reassembling later. One of the things you're going to do along this job, either along the roof if you redo the molding, is touch-up. This is touch-up paint for the Figaro. This is the roof paint from GJ. Now painting this paint, they give you a nib. There's a little brush inside here, but if you're doing bigger areas or you want a little bit more control, I prefer to use a brush. And so I bought brushes from just a dollar store. They're really cheap brushes. They don't have nylon tip. You don't want nylon tip brushes. You want some sort of natural fiber on the end. And when you paint this paint, your teachers, and you probably learned painting in the house, that you use long, broad strokes with painting. Well, that works for enamels and acrylics. Well, at least with the some acrylics, and with latex paint. That's a good technique, because those paints, when they harden, they polymerize. They actually go through chemical transformation when they harden. This paint is a solvent-based paint. It's a lacquer. Lacquers dry by the solvent evaporating, and the pigment in the paint then binds closer together as it hardens, and it becomes a very tough and hard, like a shell. Okay? When you paint with this, you don't use broad strokes. You dip your brush in very carefully. You take out a little bit of paint, like a little blob of paint, and then you dab it. And you work by dabbing, very short motions, dabbing. The paint will harden very quickly, so you have to work quickly and dab some more, dab a bit more, and do it like that instead of using broad strokes. You do broad strokes, you're going to get nothing but clumping. The paint's going to clump on you, and you're going to have a little bit of an ugly mess. Okay, so when you work with lacquer paints and you're not airbrushing, you have to dab with a brush. Okay.